So you have motor nerves and sensory nerves. Motor nerves are messages that leave your brain and go to your body to perform an action. Sensory nerves are messages that go from your body to your brain for data interpretation. Here we have the neuromuscular junction, meaning a nerve is stimulating a muscle. Now you can have more than one nerve stimulating a muscle. It kind of depends on the strength of the contraction. Darn it, I meant to bring in my toy and I forgot to do it. I might try and remember tomorrow. Has anyone ever used a TENS unit?
They're my favorite.
Some of you. Okay, so what a TENS unit is you put a patch, a sticky patch, on a muscle. Usually you do it on your back. You put it on a muscle. I do it here and then back here. You have to put two patches on because you got to have close the circuit. And then you turn the machine on, and what it does is it sends an electrical pulse that causes the muscle to contract. It mimics your brain sending a message. The higher you turn it up, the stronger the contraction. Same idea. Now, we can't adjust the strength of the impulse going through our nerves, but we can adjust the number of nerves sending the impulse. So when I have a very delicate, very fine muscle, I only have a few nerves because I don't need it to contract super, super strong. But if I have a super heavy muscle, this is going to have multiple nerves, increasing the strength of the impulse, increasing the strength of the contraction. What I've done before, which was really fun, this was pre-COVID, was I would bring my TENS unit in and we would play. And what ended up happening, and this might be when I stopped bringing it in, the last group I brought in, and this is several graduates before you guys, had a couple of competitive men. And so what happens is you have to close the circuit. So if you only put one patch on, it does not work. So what we ended up doing, this was really fun. We put a patch on one of them, and we put a patch on the other one of them, and on their, then they held hands. And they held hands, and I turned it on. And so you don't have to, so their hand that was patched, they were holding hands in their opposite hand, so we could see the contraction. And so we put the patch here on their forearm, and remember, what does your forearm control? Your hand. So on the low ones, they would just have a little And then we had a competition to see who would let go first. Turn it up, turn it up, turn it up. And now they're like, and their hand really went on, completely involuntary. Just be contracting until one of them let go. And then that was the other person was the winner.
I have a question.
Yes.
Is there some type of way where you can do that contraction?
No, because paralysis stops the motor nerve. So if you are, and that's a great point. So if I have somebody, or let's say an animal, here I have the brain, here I have the spinal cord, here I have the legs. The brain sends the message down the spinal cord to the leg nerves, causing a motion. If I have transected my spinal cord, the motion goes to here and then does what? It stops. The sensory gets to here and does what? It stops. So no, this would not help that at all. Where is my?
Because the TENS unit is not moving the muscle, it's sending an electrical impulse.
It is sending an electrical impulse to the neuromuscular junction that is mimicking the stimulation that your brain. So could I put a TENS unit on a paralyzed person and have it contract the muscle artificially? Yes. Can they control it? No. Can I allow them to have any kind of control in how the leg is moving? No. All it's going to do is just like the TENS, contracting the hand. Could they have suddenly played the guitar with the TENS unit on? No, it's artificially contracting the muscle to whatever degree and strength I set it to. So the neuromuscular junction is where the nerve comes in contact with our muscle fiber and causes the contraction of that sarcomere. And again, the stronger the impulse, the more nerves we have innervating it, the stronger the contraction. Now, if nerve supply is, or muscle function is lost for any period of time, with muscles, if you don't use it, you lose it. And that's where you get a condition called atrophy. And atrophy is where your muscles just shrink right down to nothing.
Is that how, because sometimes when you see advanced individuals, their limbs seem to be smaller, like their muscles seem to be like I guess their legs seem to be smaller. I don't know if I'm making any sense. You know how, like,
Yes, that's muscle
Yes.
atrophy.
That's atrophy.
yeah.
Yeah, that would be atrophy. You also see it in animals who are malnourished, emaciated, because their body starts metabolizing their own skeletal muscle for protein. Because just because I'm not taking in protein doesn't mean I no longer need protein. Of course not. It's the most abundantly used organic molecule in the body. See, anatomy and nutrition. Bam, bam, bam. Your body starts metabolizing protein, and that's where you get just like a walking skeleton. So the synaptic vesicle, the synapse is the word, and we're going to get into the neural system, which is really fascinating. But the synapse is the point where the nerve is innervating the muscle. And we have these things called neurotransmitters. Nerves and neurons are the social distancing champions of the body. They don't want to touch anybody. They need to have a personal bubble space. But they do need to get messages to people and to other neurons. So what they do is they have these chemicals that they can send across the space and tell the next one what to do. And depending on what kind of transmitter we use, nerves have all kinds of transmitters. Depending on the one that we use will determine what action is taken. Acetylcholine is one of the neurotransmitters that helps to specifically activate a muscle fiber. Acetylcholine is also a neurotransmitter that we give pharmaceutically to help with things like abnormal heart rate, because it will help to regulate the heart muscle contraction. Now, whatever your body does, there has to be an opposite to undo it. So if I have a space and I am a nerve and I'm trying to send a message to the muscle and I flood the space with acetylcholine, and acetylcholine swims across the space and tells the muscle what to do. What must I now do? Remove the acetylcholine. Don't swim. Everybody out of the pool. I don't know why Doug thought about that. I don't know. Sometimes he just, pew, and it comes out of my mouth before I have a chance to stop
It
it.
bypasses the filter.
It does.
I've got a
Verbal,
lot of
di-
holes in mine.
verbal diarrhea. Can't control it.
Word vomit.
You can't control it. Acetylcholine esterase, that's a $10 word if I ever did hear one, is the lifeguard getting them out of the pool. We then get all of the acetylcholine out of the space and it stops the transmission. That's it. That's as far as we're gonna go. Well, we are, when we get to the nervous system, which is so exciting. Oh my goodness gracious. The sodium potassium pump. Well, it's what continues the transmission from neuron to neuron, signaling the pathway. As oh Lord, we're gonna get into that. I know some of you are ready to curl up in the fetal position the minute I say sodium potassium pump. Has anyone ever heard of the sodium potassium pump? Some of you are very begrudgingly shaking. Yes. We are gonna have so much fun with it. I have a whole.
Do we have a different choice?
I have a fairy tale. There's an evil witch. There's a hero riding a white unicorn.
So Sleeping Beauty?
There's no Sleeping Beauty, but we do have happy townspeople.
I'm ready.
And we have two towns. We've got the township of Nah
Emerald City.
and the township of K. Because what is the chemical? Yeah, okay, we got it. Okay. I was like, oh my God, I just don't make it happen.
Okay.
Nah.
Okay, okay.
I got
Okay.
it.
Okay, we got it.
I
Okay,
got you.
okay, good.
Okay.
We'll get there. We'll get there. What? So all of that, the neuron depolarizing, repolarizing is sending the message. When it gets to the point of this particular muscle is where we start seeing this happening. Our nervous system has already sent the message. Now we are telling the muscle what to do with it. We're going to cover that whole pre-receiving the message when we get to the neural system. And trust, it's going to be amazing. It's so dramatic. It's so dramatic. You think my Romeo and Juliet gang jets dance is dramatic? Oh, you ain't seen nothing yet.
Actually, really excited.
You should be. Here I have, so this is the terminal end of the road. Our brain has sent a message down an established pathway. Our neuron to neuron to neuron communication has now reached its destination. And we have our acetylcholine along with many other neurotransmitters, but this is what is released across the space. It anchors to a specific receptor that then gets turned on, causing contraction of the muscle. We then release the acetylcholine esterase, which comes in, bumps him out, turns off the receptor, and brings him back for recycling. So if I want this muscle to contract again, I have to send another impulse to do so, to release. Now, there are so many things that can go wrong here. What do you think might happen if you don't have enough acetylcholine esterase and it doesn't remove the acetylcholine? The muscle does not stop contracting. And this is not so much a Charlie horse cramp. Those are going to be issues with your sodium and your potassium. That's where we're talking about sodium potassium pump. Yeah, usually your potassium, we're gonna discuss specifically Charlie horses and cramps.
Like my right shoulder is always in spasms. Like,
So now there are 1,047 things that can cause a spasm in a muscle. One of them is this where we have an abundance of acetylcholine binding with receptors and not being removed. One of the things, for example, that can cause this similar condition is, hang on, tick paralysis. There's a condition where an animal can get even just a single tick. They have a reaction to the anticoagulant that the tick injects, and it causes them, and their muscles have contracted and are not having a period of relaxation.
Is it like those goats when you scare them, they get?
Now that's actually kind of a form of epilepsy. That is also a neurological disorder. What the fainting goats do is the exact same thing that possums do. Yeah, possums don't just play dead. They go into almost an epileptic fit where they are almost unconscious, although they're conscious enough to react to their surroundings in minor ways. Like if you go poke it, it'll curl its lip up at you. But otherwise, it just is, it's almost like they're in a coma. They're fun to play with. Yes, Zoomer?
So is this what happens with tetanus as well?
Oh,
Or
no.
is that
No, catnip is the feline equivalent of hard narcotic.
tetanus.
no tetanus? Like
I'm sorry, I thought you said catnip. How did I get catnip out of tetanus?
I heard cat.
Did you hear catnip? Okay.
I heard.
But I'm partially deaf, so.
So am I, so am I. So yeah, so what tetany or tetanus is just a description of what's happening in the muscle. Tetany is where you have involuntary contraction of a voluntary muscle with no rest. Seizure is involuntary contraction of a voluntary muscle with a period of rest. Contract, relax, contract, relax, contract, relax, contract, relax. That's what gives you the grand mal seizure. So when we say tetany versus seizure, those themselves are not conditions. They are descriptive terms saying what is happening to the muscle.
My son had a tick or they were trying to, they thought it was epilepsy, they were about to give him the medicine for that, but then they realized it was a calcium deficiency, so that's how that is.
Yeah, tetany, yeah, absolutely.
So cramps and spasms are two different things.
Well, all you're talking about now are descriptive terms for what is happening in a muscle. How is it moving? Is it voluntary, involuntary? And it doesn't give the underlying cause. The exact, so a muscle spasm associated with epilepsy is literally no different in anatomical response to the muscle spasm I get when I don't drink enough caffeine. The premise behind it is exactly the same. So when you say spasm, all you're referring to is the involuntary contraction of a voluntary muscle. Then we have the further descriptive terms, is there a period of rest or not? Then we've got to find out why, and there's 1,047 things that can cause it. Neurological epilepsy, toxins, calcium deficiency, sodium deficiency, potassium deficiency, etc., etc. So when you say,
Ms.
oh my
Huff?
God, he's having a spasm, all you're referring to is what clinically is he exhibiting. It's a clinical sign of another condition. Zoomer.
Yeah, so what would be what would be the difference between a muscle spasm and like a restless leg issue? Like if they're just laying down and all of a sudden the leg just starts going crazy. Is that the same thing as a muscle spasm or when they're,
Absolutely no different. All a muscle spasm is an involuntary contraction of a voluntary muscle. It doesn't say anything as to why. So what that is where you have damaged or occluded the motor and sensory nerves. So when you fall asleep on your arm, we have the sensory nerves that send messages to your brain telling you what is happening to the arm, and we have motor. Well, what you've done is you have compressed that nerve and stopped it. So now your arm has not gotten any messages to your brain. And what happens is, think of I-10 as the nerve from my arm to my brain and back. And a massive, massive pileup blocking both directions happens. Nobody's getting through. Then the accidents are slowly moved out of the way and we start to get a trickle of traffic. And then suddenly the dam opens and all of the traffic is moving. Those are the pins and needles that you get.
Yeah.
That pins and
That's a
needles.
really good visual.
And the other thing that you can do to help take down the pins and needles, because those are intensely painful, run your arm under lukewarm water and it'll stop them immediately. It motor unit. So when we're talking about our neuromuscular motor unit, the motor unit is the nerve and the muscle that it innervates. Large muscles could have 100 muscle fibers being innervated at one time. Smaller muscles may have only a few muscle fibers innervated at one time. And we have the motor unit is one nerve and all of the fibers that it innervates. But you can have more than one nerve. Like for example, my quadricep, I don't even know, I can't even begin to guess how many muscle fibers. So to have one nerve innervating this one muscle would not work. So I will have one nerve innervating a bundle of those muscle fibers. That's where our brain can calculate how many of these nerves need to stimulate how many of these fibers to accomplish what I need to accomplish. When I go to pick up the empty suitcase, my brain says, okay, I'm just pulling numbers out of the air. I know that the suitcase is empty. I have already calculated I need 5 nerves to innervate their muscle fibers to have the strength I need to pick up that suitcase. And only those muscle fibers are stimulated. Suitcase isn't empty. So what happens? I can't do it. Now my brain says, okay, now I know I need 15 nerves to pick up that suitcase. And I pick it up very easily. It's all because of your brain's assessment of how many nerves based on how many muscle fibers each nerve is innervating. Does that make sense to everybody? It's so cool, right?
It's so interesting.
I know.
Like those pots that you think are heavy, when you go to pick it up, you're like,
Oh my God. Or you go and you try, or you try and open a door that you think is going to be super heavy.
or it's a push instead of
And
a pull.
and you pull it, you push it into the wall like Hulk, because your brain incorrectly assessed how many muscle fibers needed to be innervated. And when I say the word innervate, I mean stimulated by a nerve.
walking down the
So
stairs.
if you were to like,
Oh God, no, that's the most terrifying thing on the planet. When you're walking down the stairs and you didn't realize you were finished and you go to step off the last step and there's no more last step.
Or if you thought you were done walking.
Oh my God,
upstairs.
that life is gonna pass before your eyes. It's horrific.
I step off curbs like that sometimes, like I'm not expecting to step off the curb, so I go down.
so if you have like a holding muscle, could that be like your brain not sending enough to know you have to use that much? That's why you overstrain it?
No, people are,
What I was saying, you know, it's stupid.
so, although animals can pull a muscle too, although they don't do it on their own, it's usually to pleasure or
Oh.
please their owner to do an activity they're not meant to do. But humans will move in an incorrect way. And everything about us that we've learned so far, your connective tissue, your adipose tissue, your tendons, your ligaments, the makeup of your joints, and how your muscles connect to your joints is set up to prevent them from moving in a way that they're not supposed to move. And I'm like, and I move, and then my brain goes, look at the damage that you just did. So we're gonna shut that down, because remember, pain is your brain's way of telling you, you're not allowed to use this anymore, I need to fix it. And that's where you get the involuntary muscle contraction, you get the remodeling of the muscle fibers, and you have the pain. And depending on why you are sore, if it's simply because of something like you overworked out, it could also be because of the lactic acid buildup, which is a byproduct of you overstimulating your muscles to contract.
Why do you swear after working out? You're not doing it.
Absolutely, and you're like, oh man, I can't lift my arms.
Yeah, but then you get
That's
upset
because
when
your
you-
brain is like, look at this mess you just made. I have all of this to repair, so you're not allowed to use these again for the time. Bam, and then you can't even move them.
Forgot the biceps and stuff.
Oh my God. Or your quads, and you're just like, oh.
Yeah, like we're going to bear horse, just getting out.
All right, so here I've got a little bit more terminology. I want you to think back to when I was getting the swizzle sticks, when I was getting the straws and I was wrapping them in saran wrap. All these terms is what layer of saran wrap am I using? Is it the layer of saran wrap that is binding the myofibrils together? Is it the saran wrap I'm using to do the second layer of binding? Or is it the saran wrap to wrap around the entire muscle and separate it from other muscles? Endomysium. Endo, inside. So the endomysium is the saran wrap I'm using on the inside of the muscle to bind together my individual muscle fibers.
That's the first layer on the straws.
And the first layer of the straws. Then I have a bundle of myofibrils. Once I bundled it together using the endomysium, this is now called a fascicle. A fascicle is the term for a bundle of muscle fibers. I then take another fascicle, which is another bundle of muscle fibers wrapped in endomysium. Another bundle of fascicles, which is just muscle fibers wrapped in endomysium. And I'm going to take those fascicles, bundles, and I'm going to bundle them together with a perimysium around. Finally, all of these fascicles are bound together, and I have the epimysium, which is going to surround them. So I have a picture coming up that I think is going to be very helpful for you visual learners. This is just for those of you that like to write it down word for word. So I'll give you guys a minute.
Are the paramycium and the epimycium touching?
No,
Okay,
I will
thank you.
show you, give me a second and I will show you a picture that I think is going to put the light bulbs on for everybody. For all of the buddies. All right.
So if the endomycin were to fail, everything else would probably collapse too. Like if it
Pretty much.
altered domino effect.
Well, if anything fails, absolutely. All right. Let me do this. See?
Yeah.
Here I have a, oops, where's my pen? Here I have a, come on, what is happening? Pen. Here I have a muscle fiber made up of here's the myofibril. Do you see the little sarcomeres on there? So I take the straws, I take the little myofibrils, I bundle them together into a muscle fiber. And the saran wrap that binds that together is the endomycium. And so you can see how all of these, you see how these bundles are bundled together? And they are all bundled with the endomycium. Now I have that bundle of muscle myofibrils, the tiny little sarcomere fibers, and I've bundled them together. Oops. This is my fascicle, a bundle of bundles. And the fascicle has got saran wrap called the perimycium. So you can see here is a bundle of bundles, here is a bundle of bundles, here is a bundle of bundles. And they are, hang on, they are all bound together with the perimycium. Now I'm going to take the whole muscle and I am going to bind all of those fascicles together with the epimycium. What questions can I answer now for you about any of, does that picture help?
Yeah.
This is fascicles, this is a bundle of fascicles.
Those dark, I guess, structures underneath, are those motor pin plates, the little bitty?
Those are just cells.
Oh.
Don't worry about them. If I didn't mention it on the picture, don't worry about it. This picture is specifically to show you the layers of the connective tissue that holds the bundles together. The innermost layer is the endomycium. We then take that bundle them together to make a fascicle. Fascicle is bundled with the perimycium. So then we have here perimycium, perimycium, perimycium. And we take all of those bundles and bundle them together and wrap them up in the epimycium.
So the epimycium would touch the perimycium of the ones on the edges there.
Yes.
Okay.
So what you're looking at here is not something you would be able to see with your naked eye. You're not going to be able to see individual myofibrils. Now, what you can see to a degree are individual muscle fibers. Think about a nice medium rare filet mignon. And when you cut into it, you can see the striations, the stripes. Now that's not the stripes from the actin and myosin. Those are individual muscle fibers. So no, are you going to be able to see the endosteum and the periosteum? You are not. You are not. What other questions can I answer for you about any of this?
How do they figure that out?
How do they what?
How did they figure it out with the little electron microscope?
Some guy smarter than me.
Woke up one day.
Well, no, but I mean, it's the same. My answer would be the same for how did they make any medical discovery? They tried stuff until they figured it out.
Miss Huff,
Yes.
so it's saying that, are you saying that the endomysium are the bundles of the fiber?
Saying that the endomysium is what is holding the bundle of muscle fibers together. It's the saran
Okay.
wrap.
Thank you.
So like if you're like butchering, like I've had to like butcher deer and stuff before, and there's usually like, do you like, I don't know what it's called, but sometimes you have to like peel a layer off the muscle. Is
So what
the
that is another outer layer on top of the epimysium. As you can see, here's the epimysium. Do you see here this white stuff right here?
Mhm.
Well, part of that is the tendon, but we also have all of these individual muscles further encapsulated in a connective tissue called fascia. And what fascia does is help to keep the muscles and allow them to slide over other muscles. So when you are field dressing or doing anything, the fascia is that kind of white or yellowish. You peel it off almost like a sheet. That's the fascia. That is the not hard, but the outermost toughest layer of connective tissue that we have not gone in as far as the inner working makeup of the muscle. But yeah, if you take the abdomen and if I open your abdomen and just open the skin and I nick right here, I haven't gone through the muscle, I can take my hand and I can put it down in between the fascia and the abdominal muscle and separate it. And that is the fascia. And in fact, let me show you something kind of cool.